there's this look. I thought that's a funny photograph. He was on there with Joyce, and I bloody cut her off and put me in. What am I looking?
When you were in the register
Registrar office.
Yeah.
Go for bloody tangent, forget what you're looking for. Pictured with the registrar, Tregear Registrar Officer, Mrs. B. Espley, Mrs. M. Penny and Blaenau Gwent Superintendent Registrar, Mr. Roger Giles. Business as usual for Tregear's award-winning Register Office. If it wasn't for some thoughtless thieves, everything in the garden would be rosy for Tregear Register Office, which received a glittering report in a recent Welsh Consumer Council survey. The cruel intruders paid the office a nocturnal visit recently and left with carpets from the wedding room and the registrar's office. Yeah, they took bloody fitted carpet from the marriage room. I'm Margaret Penny, and I was a registrar from 1970, I think, until I retired when I was 60, 1993. Well, people used to come in mainly in Bromau office for their birth certificates and death certificates and things like that, because the registration started in 1837 and all the books were in the Bromau safe. In every register office they are actually.
Was it not traditional to get married in a register?
Oh yeah, lots of people. When I came over to Tregear Register Office, we had 12 every Saturday usually. I got married in Bromau Church, St Mary's Church. I got married there because we always went to Calvary Baptist Church. But at that time, it hadn't had a minister for years. And I didn't know the process of trying to find a minister to marry me and give notice. So I went to the vicar in Bromau Church and he agreed to marry us. And that was it. Flowers, that was the striking first impression on stepping into the wedding room. 3 generous arrangements lent colour and warmth to the room.
Who used to do the flowers?
Me. Roger was a bugger, he could have spent on the flowers, but no, he was so used to cheese pairing. So I said we'll have some artificial ones as well, so we always got something. Because there was always people getting married in the middle of the week. Well, sometimes the fresh flowers had dropped by then. I had one where I was just going to start to marry them, and the groom's mother stood up and said, "Have you told them about your past?" And there was sort of a deadly hush in the waiting room, and a couple of the guests went on to her and shut her up. No. Well, they said, "No, it's nothing, and carry on." Not ambiguous, was it? Yes, they wanted to come dressed as that. They said, we wanted to come in fancy dress. Well, I said, yeah, that's up to you. I thought, how stupid was that? Yeah, they came there dressed up. Well, yeah. Well, they were in their right mind. When Mr. Giles was there, he'd marry them and I'd register it. And then when he retired, I used to marry them, and then they had Brenda was my registrar. Was Mr. Giles surprised at the pat on the back given to Tregear office by the Welsh Consumer Council? Well, let me put it this way. In all the years I've worked here, we haven't had a complaint. I think that speaks for itself. Git. He was the beggar that wasn't willing to spend on flowers. I was saying, well, let's buy them and then send the the bill in and they'll have to pay it. Oh, well, you know, oh, well, no, they've never done it, that's why. Oh, he was always all right to me. He used to bloody chase Brenda all over the office if I wasn't there. So I went back one day and I said, "Where's Roger?" And she said, "In the safe." You know the safe, don't you? Remember the safe?
What was it like?
Well, it was a room, bloody walls like that.
Right.
The door was like that. And she pushed him inside, slammed the door and turned the key.
Cooling off.
As she said, should he cool off in there? So I said, "Well, don't Mrs. Soft let him up." "No, let me in there," she said. So I unlocked the door and he came out very sheepish. Nice cake they give me, didn't they? I used to speak to the photographer before the wedding and I'd say, "Now, you can come into the marriage room when I call you. You were not to come into the marriage room during the ceremony and snap away as they thought they could." When I married them, I'd go out and call them in and say, "Right, I've married them now, you can arrange them and take their photograph pretending to sign," because they'd already signed and everything then. So I just turned to a blank page in the register and they used to pretend to sign then to have their photograph taken. That's because in the marriage register there are 4 marriages. It's all right if they're the first one up there, but if they're the 4th one, you can't photograph that page because there are 3 other marriages on there which you've got no right to photograph. If they were very naughty, sometimes I'd go and get a blank register, put that in front of them. That would lure them. I like her eating a bowl of cereal in the middle of it. Oh, they've got their masks on. I think they're cake. Oh my God. A slicey cut.
What do you think?
I think they'll bring that up in the divorce court and say, "Look how happy we were."
You posing for the photo, don't they?
Where?
Yeah.
Well, I'm on the phone. Got it now? Oh, there were some lovely ones. In quite a few, especially when Brenda was alive. Brenda and I would do the weddings and quite a few people came back in afterwards and said, "Thank you ever so much for that wedding. We were dreading coming here because a lot of people wanted to get married in church. Well, if they were divorced, they couldn't. And then they have to get married in the registrar office and they were dreading it. And, we did try to make it as enjoyable as possible. Oh, I liked them all, really, they were all right. There were some very, very nice families. And then you get some real... I had one day, I've never forgotten it. He evidently didn't want to marry her. Right. And I think he had to marry her because she was pregnant. And, he stood there like that and she stood there and I thought, well, if that was my daughter, I wouldn't be letting her be marrying you, you miserable looking toad.
Any advice for people to get married now?
Well, do it if you want to, but don't get... If you've made her pregnant, go and have a vasectomy.
Thank you, man. Perfect.